What do you think about this? Let's talk about the ZEISS BATIS 40mm f2.0 for Sony full frame, because this is a really interesting lens. The build quality of this lens feels solid and robust with the metal casing around the lens, and it does feel a little bit more expensive than most lenses because of the metal around it, and that might just be because metal is a more expensive material than plastic, but I think you get my point, you know? When something is made out of metal, it automatically feels more expensive, it feels more well made, and it feels better than something that is made out of cheap plastic. It does weigh 361 grams and it's not a light lens, but I wouldn't say that it's a heavy lens either. It's basically the same or a little bit lighter than the BATIS 85. And it's really well balanced on the Sony camera, so you don't really notice the weight of the lens. The focus ring does feel a bit stiff, and personally I do not like the rubber that ZEISS has put on the BATIS series, because the rubber does feel a little bit cheap. I would have loved if they put a more rugged rubber and gave the focus ring a little bit smoother feeling to the touch. But you know, it serves its purpose and it does what it's supposed to do, so that's fine. This lens does have a switch here on the side, which allows you to control the focusing distance of the lens, and the other BATIS lenses that I've tried doesn't have any button or switches at all, so this is kind of a cool feature. And it allows you to use the full focus range of the lens, and then you can set it to infinity to 0.4 meters, and then you can set it to 0.5 meters to 0.24 meters, which gives you this really macro look to the images. And this is something that I found out was really cool when I was shooting a lot of video with it. We also have the OLED screen here up at the top, which allows you to see the focusing distance that you have when you're using manual focus, and this is something that all the BATIS lenses have. I think it's a really cool feature, but I do not use it that much, but I can imagine that it's a really good thing to have if you are doing some astrophotography or something like that, where you really need to see what you are setting your focus distance to. The focusing distance of this lens is what makes it stand out if you compare it to similar lenses in the same focal range, such as the Sony ZEISS 55mm f1.8, which has a close focusing distance of 50 centimeters. So if you compare that lens to this, they almost get like 25 centimeters closer with this lens, and that really allows you to get some really close-up detailed shots with a really nice and blurred out background, and that is something that's really cool with it. You also get the O-ring here on the back, which means that the lens is weather sealed, and this is something that I really like about the BATIS series, because it gives you this extra security when you're shooting in a dusty environment or maybe some rain or something like that. So huge thumbs up for that. When it comes to the image performance, I thought I'd test this lens towards the Tamron 2875 f2.8, because that is also a lens with macro capabilities, and it's also almost half the price of this lens, so you know, it's the more affordable option of the two. And I was actually quite surprised with the results of the images, because I thought that this lens would blow the Tamron out of the water with the sharpness and micro contrast and all that ZEISS magic, but the Tamron is actually sharper wide open than this is wide open. And I do know that I did shoot at 2.8 with the Tamron and 2.0 with this, but we're probably going to use the lenses wide open most of the time, so I thought I'd compare them both wide open. The autofocus of the lens works really well. It's super fast, really snappy, especially in video mode, and I also tested the eye autofocus and didn't have any issues at all. I gotta say, the video performance of this lens is really good, and I did get some cool footage when me and Amanda went out to take a Swedish fika outside of Gothenburg here in the forest. So as you saw, the lens performed really good, and I do think you can get some really interesting detailed shots with the close focusing, and you also get this really blurred out background which feels really cinematic. So I gotta say, it was really fun to shoot with. Overall, I do think that lens is a solid piece of equipment that can give you some really cool results. I would definitely consider this lens if I had an APS-C camera such as the Sony a6300 or a6400, because that will give you an equivalent of 60mm, and that is a really good focal range to shoot portraits or maybe some street photography, and really cool to have a macro lens built into that as well. But when it comes to full frame, I personally do think that there are some better options that you can go for. The price is definitely the biggest downside of this lens, especially since the Tamron 2075 comes in at almost half the price and provides a sharper image wide open. But I do think this is a really interesting lens when it comes to video work, because it can yield you some really good result and gives you this really blurred out background. So if you knew a lot of videography, then this lens will actually be really cool to have in your arsenal. I would love to hear your thoughts on the lens, so please do drop a comment below. And if you want to buy any of the camera gear that I use, I've also put some links to them below as well, so you can go and check them out. If you liked the video, I'd really appreciate it if you give it a thumbs up, because it does make a huge difference, so thank you for that. And if you haven't subscribed yet, that'd be really appreciated as well. So thank you so much for watching, and until next time, take care. The last video I uploaded was the last video I recorded as not being a dad, and this is the first video that I record as a dad. That is insane. There's so many feelings involved, and I will do a video about that. Yeah.